There's a number I want you to sit with for a second. In some studies of older adults who break their hip, roughly 1 in 4 to 1 in 3 don't make it to the 1-year mark afterward. Not from the fracture itself, from everything that unravels after it. And the wild part? For most of those people, the fall wasn't the real story. The real story started decades earlier, in a pair of legs that got weaker every single year without anyone noticing. I'm going to show you why the muscle in your legs might be one of the most underrated predictors of how long and how well you live. And I'm going to give you one movement, completely free, that you can start today. Before anything else, do this with me. Stand up right now and lower yourself into a squat, as deep as feels okay. Then stand back up. Feel that? That's your quads at the front of your thighs, your hamstrings behind them, your glutes, your calves, your lower back and core all switching on at once, in one movement, with zero equipment. That single motion recruits more muscle simultaneously than almost anything else you can do without a gym. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why that matters so much more than most people realize. Here's the part nobody warns you about. Muscle mass tends to peak somewhere in your mid-20s to early 30s. After that, if you're not doing anything to actively maintain it, research suggests the average person loses somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 2% of muscle mass per year. That sounds tiny, practically a rounding error, except run that forward. 2 decades of practically nothing, and you're looking at losing something close to a third of what you started with. Push it closer to 30 years, and the losses compound into something that can genuinely reshape how someone moves through the world. The gap between rising from a low chair without thinking about it and needing a hand to do it. And it doesn't decline in a straight line either. Many researchers describe the rate of loss accelerating somewhere after the age of 40. There's actually a clinical name for this process, sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass and strength. It's estimated to affect a meaningful share of older adults living independently in the community, and it doesn't stay abstract. It shows up as falls, fractures, hospital stays, loss of independence. I work in emergency medicine, and this is a pattern I see constantly. An older patient comes in after a fall. The fall itself is rarely the actual problem. The problem is what led up to it. Years of gradually eroding muscle, combined with slower reflexes and a nervous system that can no longer catch the body fast enough when it starts to tip. One bad step becomes a hip fracture. And a hip fracture in an older adult is a genuinely serious medical event, one that a lot of people don't fully appreciate until they're the one living through it. That's not meant to scare you. It's meant to explain why the rest of this video matters.
Here's something most people never connect to leg strength. Muscle isn't just tissue that moves you around. It's part of a live, constantly updating communication loop with the brain. Every time a muscle contracts, a signal has traveled from your brain, down your spinal cord, out through motor neurons, into the fibers themselves. At the same time, sensory neurons are sending information back up about joint position, tension, balance, load. It's a two-way channel, running constantly, mostly below your conscious awareness. Your cerebellum, the part of your brain tucked at the base of your skull that handles coordination and balance, depends heavily on signals coming up from your legs and feet to know where your body is in space and whether it's about to lose balance. When people stop moving regularly, those signaling pathways don't just sit idle. They tend to get less efficient because the nervous system generally follows a use it or lose it pattern, trimming back connections it isn't relying on. Which means the less you move, the less sharp your brain's coordination system becomes. That matters at any age, but it becomes especially consequential once you're past 50 or 60. It also explains something strange that happens when people return to squatting after a long break. The first improvements you notice usually aren't physical. In the first week or two, your muscle fibers haven't meaningfully changed size yet. What's improved is your nervous system getting better at recruiting and timing the muscle you already have. The visible structural growth tends to show up a bit later, often somewhere around the 3 to 6 week mark. So if you look in the mirror after 2 weeks and think nothing's happening, something is happening. It's just happening in the wiring first, before it shows up in the mirror.
Now, here's the question I get asked constantly. Out of every exercise that exists, why does this video keep coming back to something as basic as a squat? Why this one movement punches so far above its weight? The honest answer is that the squat may be the most complete movement the human body can perform with nothing but body weight. Quads,
glutes, among the largest and most metabolically active muscles you have, hamstrings, calves, hip flexors, and a whole network of stabilizing core muscles all firing together. Very few movements give you that kind of return with zero equipment and zero setup. There's also a metabolic angle worth understanding. Skeletal muscle, the muscle you can see and feel, is one of the primary places your body sends glucose after a meal. When you eat carbohydrates, that sugar has to go somewhere, and a large share of it is taken up by muscle tissue, but only if there's enough of it and it's functioning well. When someone loses significant muscle mass over years, that system becomes less efficient. Blood sugar regulation can suffer, insulin doesn't do its job as smoothly, and over time, some research links this pattern to a higher risk of conditions like type 2 diabetes. Leg muscle mass and strength specifically have shown up in a number of studies as associated with longer, healthier lifespans. Though, of course, correlation in this kind of research doesn't mean any one person's outcome is guaranteed either way. There's also a joint health piece that surprises people. Joints that go unloaded for long stretches tend to get stiffer and less well-nourished over time, which may be part of why people who move the least often deal with more joint discomfort, not less. Bodies generally seem built to be used.
How to actually do one properly. Quick heads up before you start. If this is new to you, your legs will likely be sore the next day, maybe the day after too. That's typically just delayed onset muscle soreness, a normal response to using muscle in a new way. It tends to fade as your body adapts, and it usually stops being this intense after the first handful of sessions. A lot of the squats are bad for your knees reputation actually traces back to technique, not the movement itself. Done with reasonable form, squatting is generally considered supportive of knee health. Done carelessly for a long time, it can contribute to discomfort. So let's go through what solid form generally looks like, though I'd also recommend searching squat technique on YouTube so you can watch it from angles I can't show you here. Feet a little wider than shoulder width, toes turned outward somewhere around 30 to 45 degrees, though your ideal angle depends a bit on your own hip structure, so find what feels natural. The key detail: your knees should track in roughly the same direction as your toes throughout the movement, and at the bottom, you generally want to still see the tips of your toes past your knees. Watch for your knees caving inward. That shifts load onto parts of the joint that aren't built to handle it well over time. Weight distribution matters more than people expect. Aim for roughly 2/3 to 3/4 of your weight through your heels, not your toes. If you can wiggle your toes slightly inside your shoes at the bottom of the movement, your weight is probably in a good spot. Keep your back in a neutral position. A slight forward lean is normal and expected. Just avoid your lower back rounding. Chest lifted, and go to whatever depth is comfortable for you. If a full squat isn't accessible yet, a partial squat, or even squatting down to a chair, is a completely legitimate starting point. Not a lesser version of the exercise, just where a lot of people reasonably begin.
One of the biggest reasons people quit new exercise habits within the first couple of weeks is that they expect visible results immediately, don't see them, and assume it isn't working. In reality, they're often stopping right as things are starting to build. In roughly the first 10 days, most of the adaptation is happening in the nervous system, better coordination, smoother movement, even though the muscle tissue itself hasn't structurally changed much yet. From around week 2 to 3, your body starts ramping up the cellular machinery behind muscle building, increased protein synthesis, more activity at the cellular level, groundwork being laid. Somewhere around weeks 3 to 6, many people start noticing measurable changes, stairs feeling a little easier, standing up from a low seat taking less effort. By weeks 6 to 12, gains tend to compound. More strength, often better balance and coordination, which for many people over time may translate into a lower risk of the kind of falls we talked about earlier. This timeline can move slower depending on your age and starting point, and that's completely normal. What generally matters more than speed is consistency over time.